and welcome to another video. Today was a pretty big day because Magnus and Hikaru finally played in Title Tuesday. I think every chess fan has been waiting for this for a long time, so let's see how the games went. So in the early Title Tuesday, Magnus played with the white pieces and he opened the game up with the move 1c4. Now here there's a lot of things Hikaru can do. He's generally played the move e5. You can also go for e6, going for a queen's gambit decline. But Hikaru goes knight f6. G3 and E6, so he wants to steer the game back into a Catalan. So bishop G2, D5, knight F3, and Hikaru sticks to his guns with bishop E7, D4, short castles, and here Magnus played the unusual move queen to B3. Now, the main move here is short castles, and Hikaru has generally defended him with the move D takes C4, queen C2, and here B5. Now, he also had a game against Grandmaster Benjamin Bok. That game ended in a draw, so he usually plays this line where black sacrifices a pawn, but he gets a lot of compensation. But Magnus decides to steer the game into slightly unusual waters, if that's even, an expression. He goes queen to b3. Alright, so c5 by Hikaru, c takes d5 by Magnus. Hikaru captures on d4, short castles, and Hikaru captures with his queen on d5. So we get this equal endgame where the one thing white is banking on is his bishop on this long diagonal, so white still has a little bit of pressure, but I think here Hikaru played a really good move. He played knight c6, and his idea is that white can take here and damage the black pawn structure, but black gets a lot of activity. He can go bishop a6, hit this, and it's difficult for white to develop. I mean, if you go knight c3, first of all, black can take and the structure will be symmetrical, but again, after bishop a6, this is awkward to defend. There's bishop f6 coming, rook b8, so black has a lot of activity to compensate for the slightly worse pawn structure. So Magnus played rook to d1, Hikaru took, takes, and bishop f6, activating his bishop along the long diagonal, rook d1, and now bishop d7. And I think here Magnus made a really good decision, because it's easily to drift here and get a worse position. Because let's say you go knight to d2, then black just plays something like rook c8, and again, black is the active position, all his pieces are developed, and it's difficult for white to get this bishop into the game. This knight is also liking a good spot. So Magnus decided to give up his bishop for the knight in the center. Takes, and now knight c3, hitting this pawn on d5. Alright, so Hikaru took, Magnus recaptured, and I think here Hikaru made a slight inaccuracy. I think he should have played the move bishop e5, hitting this pawn on e2, which is a little bit awkward for white to defend. I mean, you can go king of 1, but then you go rook e8, and again, how do you deal with this? And also, you can put the bishop on c4, where it will defend the pawn on d5 actively. Alright, but Hikaru played bishop e6, which is a little bit passive, and this allowed Magnus to get a slight edge in the endgame. So he played bishop e3, rook fc8, and bishop d4. Now Magnus's bishop is a little bit more active. Rook c4, rook db1, hitting this pawn over here. Hikaru goes rook c7, and now another great move, a4. So you want to go a5 because then black's rook on 8 will be tied to the defense of this pawn. You can play a6, but then you're giving white this b6 square for the rook. f6 was played. Rook b5 from Magnus, so he is hitting this pawn. So Hikaru played a6, rook b6, but now bishop d7. A good move. So he's rerouting the bishop to c6. Magnus played a5 to fix the structure, bishop c6, and f3. So Magnus wants to bring his king up and then potentially go g4, h4, and g5 to try to chip away the black pawn structure on the king side. So Hikaru played rook e8, king f2 to defend the pawn, bishop e5, e3, and bishop c6 back. I think he was worried about bishop c4, because now after rook b1 your bishop will probably have to go back. So he figured okay, let me keep my bishop on c6, where it will defend all of the pawns. But now Magnus played g4, h6, and h4. Again, he wants to go for this break potentially. King h7 by Magnus, rook g1, and rook e6. So I feel like here, Magnus has really squeezed out the maximum of his position, but it's difficult to make progress because you want to go for the move g5. But I think if you go g5 here, Hikaru probably was intending to take, and h5 is my assumption. I don't think you should take with the h-pawn and go f5, because after king g3, king f4, maybe then rook h1, and the rook comes in through the h-file, this endgame looks pretty unpleasant, despite the opposite color bishops. But again, I think taking here and h5 should hold the draw for black. I mean, you can go king g6, and white's king cannot really come up here because it will always be checked. So Magnus played rook to c1, but I feel like he kind of let Hikaru off the hook here. Hikaru played bishop d7, and now when the rooks come off, it feels like Magnus doesn't have enough pressure anymore, and this pawn on a5 could become weak potentially. Rook b1 was played, bishop c8, an excellent move, because now this rook is free to move and create counterplay. So king g3, rook c6, king f4, king g6, rook g1, rook e6. Again, if Magnus goes g5, I think Hikaru wants to take, and go h5, keep everything closed. So rook b1 was played, rook to c6, rook b2, rook e6, and the players went for a repetition. And so this game ended in a draw. Again, Magnus had a slight squeeze in the endgame. Of course, especially the Magnus fans want to see him put on the squeeze, but even as a neutral spectator, it's always a pleasure to see him grinding down these endgames. But in this game, he wasn't quite able to do so, and Hikaru, due to good defense, holds a draw. Alright, so now let's have a look at the second game they played. This game was a lot wilder. Alright, so in the late Title Tuesday, Hikaru had the white pieces and he opened the game up with the move 1e4. So usually you would expect Magnus to play someone like e5 or the Sicilian, but he shows in this game that he wants to fight, and drawing on his success of the Julius Baer Generations Cup, he plays g6, the modern defense. A very offbeat opening, and it's generally Hikaru's main opening with the black pieces. So I was very interested to see how Hikaru was going to tackle it with white. So he played d4, d6, knight c3, bishop g7, and he goes for the very direct h4. Now, Magnus had that game against Prague, where I believe he played knight f6, and one way or another they got to this position where Prague played h5 and sacrificed the exchange. Got a good position, but later the game ended in a draw. I definitely recommend you check out that game. White gets a very strong initiative, and it's also a lot of fun to play, so definitely make sure to check it out. So Magnus plays the move h5, and here I thought Hikaru perhaps made a bit of an inaccuracy. I think generally white continues with, let's say, bishop e3, and delays the move knight to h3. And the reason for that is that, let's say black goes c6, you can go queen e2, for example, and you will see moves like this, right, with knight f6, b5, long castles. And eventually, black has to develop this knight. But the moment you do, here white goes knight h3, because now black cannot take it, right? So after Hikaru played knight h3, Magnus decides that he does not want this knight landing on the g5 square, and he decides to snap it off. Alright, so Hikaru recaptures, knight d7 by Magnus, bishop e3, and knight gf6. Right, so Hikaru goes f3, c6, goes queen to d2, so Hikaru wants to make his intentions clear. He wants to go queenside castles, b5, queenside castles, and b4 by Magnus. So kind of similar to the game he played against Arjun with the black pieces earlier in the Pierce defense. I analyzed that game also on my YouTube, by the way. Knight e2, a5 by Magnus, so he wants to expand on this side of the board. King b1, and here I felt like Magnus made quite a surprising decision. I feel like his king sits pretty safe over here in the center, and you'd expect him to continue with a move like rook to b8 or queen c7 and maybe start pushing on this side of the board, but he went for kingside castles. And here, of course, it's easier with the computer, but Hikaru could have just unleashed the move g4. And if black takes, apparently you just move the rook back, and if takes, you go knight g3 with h5 coming. Again, it's pretty unclear, but the computer suggests that this is the best way forward, because again, you want to open up lines towards the enemy king when there's opposite side castling involved. Anyway, Hikaru played bishop to g5, knight c5 by Magnus, putting pressure on the center. The point is that you don't really want to go d5 because this opens up the line for the bishop. So Hikaru went bishop h6, trying to exchange the most important defender around the black king. c4, takes, and he goes queen to g5. Alright, so again, he wants to get in this move g4, open up the black king. Magnus goes knight h7, pushing the queen out of there, queen e3, and now he goes c3. White shouldn't really be interested in taking this pawn, because again, it opens up lines towards his king. So generally you just have to ignore what your opponent is doing on the other side of the board. So Hikaru goes g4. He wants to open up here. Again, Magnus doesn't quite want to take, because this makes it easier for white to break through. So he goes knight hf6. In case white takes, he recaptures with the knight, and for now, he's keeping the h file closed. Hikaru wants to get rid of this knight on f6 to open up lines, so he goes pawn to e5, hitting the knight on f6. Knight to d5, queen e4 by Hikaru, hitting the knight, e6 by Magnus to defend, and now Hikaru decides to take on h5. Of course, black should not recapture, the king is wide open, but Magnus goes c takes b2, opening up Hikaru's king. Alright, so pawn takes g6 by Hikaru, just continuing his operation towards the black king on g7, and Magnus goes for f5, a great defensive move. Hikaru captures it en passant, and here Magnus made quite a surprising decision. I was expecting him to take with the knight, hitting the queen over here. I mean, white can take here, and there's no... I mean, maybe there is even rook e8, but there's queen f7. The computer's suggesting this line? What? And apparently the queen can get trapped. Pretty dank. But even if you don't go for this and you go for something like a4 followed by b3, you know, black could potentially take over the initiative, even though it could get pretty scary with h5, h6 going. Anyway, Magnus captured with the queen, but this feels a little bit too slow. So Hikaru played h5, he wants to go h6, rook h8 to stop that. Now f4, he wants to go bishop g2, bring this bishop into the game as well. Knight 7 b6, bishop g2, rook h6, queen to d3, opening up the line for the bishop, rook c8, Hikaru takes, and queen a6, great move. He's hitting the rook and this pawn on d6, so I don't quite understand why he didn't take this pawn over here. I think Hikaru, after he made his move rook to h1, he was also like, oh my god, why did I not capture the pawn? I mean, that's just a straight up blunder. Anyway, it happens. Magnus played queen f5, threatening checkmate in 1. So Hikaru went queen to d3, right back. And so they got into this endgame, which looks winning for white. Because white is up a pawn, the pawn on b2 is about to fall. You have two strong connected passers on this side of the board. But things are not that easy. Magnus played knight to c3. Takes, and now it's not that easy to get rid of this pawn. Which is what you want to do to make way for the king. Hikaru played d5, takes, rook to c4, hitting this. Hikaru played rook d3, hitting this one over here. Magnus played d5, f5 and d4. Now he's got this pawn chain over here. Hikaru's got his pawns on the king side. But eventually you do want to try to chip away at these pawns over here, because otherwise there's always the potential that your king could get checkmated down the road. Alright, so he played rook g3. He's starting to go f6. Moving the king out of the way, and then you win one of the rooks and you win the game. So Magnus played rook c8, rook g4. And here Magnus missed a big opportunity. Apparently he could have played the move d3, which sets the pawns in motions. Because if you take on d3, black gets rook takes h5. And the point is that if white takes, then there's c2 and black promotes. That's why you had to distract the rook from h1. But he went here, hitting this pawn over here. Rook f1 was played by Hikaru. King f6, rook takes d4, rook h5, rook d6, king e5. All of this was good by Hikaru. But here, I mean, both players are very low on time. Right, so I'm not criticizing the players. I just wanted to recap this game. Again, this is one that everyone has been looking forward to. But don't take this as criticism at all, because, you know, everyone makes a bunch of mistakes when you're down to less than 10 seconds. But that being said, Hikaru missed g7, hitting the rook, rook g8, and rook g6. And I don't think there's anything you can do about f6, f7. And probably this was the most straightforward win of the game. Alright, he played rook to e1. Again, if he gets these pawns in motion, he is going to win the game. Rook g5, a3, a4, king a2, rook to g2. So Hikaru went back, defending this one over here. Rook f8. And here he probably throws away his advantage. Here the winning move would have been rook to e3, because you cannot defend this pawn. And again, if white takes here, then the king breaks loose, and there's just no hope for black. One line to illustrate would be, let's say, king d4, you give a check, and something like rook e1. And black's problem is always that if he takes, not this one actually, but he gets skewered like this, and white wins the rook. And if king f4, I guess you take over here, and all of the endgames should be winning down the road. But Hikaru played rook g1, but now Magnus took and played king e5. And you cannot defend this pawn over here. Or, I mean, you can. But after king f6, there's no way to make progress, right? Because, again, you're kind of stuck on the back rank. Rook f3, rook c8, and, I mean, good luck. What are you going to do? So Hikaru played g7, rook g8, and rook g3. So now they're transitioning into this. White will potentially pick up this pawn. And White's going to have the a and c pawns against a4. And he might potentially pick up that pawn as well. Anyway, rook a7 was played by Magnus. Takes king e5. King c3, king d5, rook b4, king c5. Hikaru is still pressing here, but it should be a draw. Check, king a5. h5, king a6, rook b5. Rook d8, king c3. Rook e8, king b4. Alright, so to get to this endgame, right? White has a c and a pawns. A rook versus a rook. But this endgame is still a draw. And I believe Magnus generally knows the drawing technique, which he showcased here. Goes rook c8, king b4, and rook h8. Hikaru goes a4, and you go rook h1. And I believe the trick is here that you just wait. There's no good way for White to make progress. You just wait with your rook here. So you always have the checks from the side. And you potentially also have the checks from the back. Alright, so rook d5, king a5. Black takes this pawn over here. It looks a little bit dangerous because your king is away from the pawn, but the king comes back in time. Anyway, c5 was played. King a5, king c7, king a6. The black king walks back. c6, rook h7, rook d7, rook h6, rook d6. But here, Magnus made a very surprising mistake. I mean, although, again, I don't want to be too critical. He was down to 3 seconds. But this is a pretty basic rook endgame. And the move to draw here is the move rook h8. And you play this move because you want to stop the king from moving up the board so White can further push this pawn up. But he played rook h7 check. And here Hikaru missed a win with king to c8. The point is that Black cannot play king b6 because there's c7 check. And again, as soon as the pawn reaches the 7th rank, White is going to win the game. If the king goes here, I believe the easiest win is rook to c6. To make sure your rook is behind and now your king can move. And Black is going to have to give up his rook for the pawn. But as fate would have had it, Hikaru played king to d8. Now Magnus checked. King e7. Here king b6 is good. Again, c7, there's king b7. Rook e6. But now king check. Rook h1. And there is just no way of escaping the draw. And so this game ended peacefully as well. Again, a great fight between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. I think there's no doubt in anyone's mind that these are the two greatest blitz players in the world. Let me know in the comments who you guys think is better. And I think, just like everyone, it would be great if these two would battle out in a great match sometime. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time.